In the First Lady, we are shown the ever evolving role of being the First Lady of the United States, especially when you consider that despite how marriages are supposed to be a partnership, clearly when it comes to being First Lady, it's more so meant to be a supportive role, and not just your main supportive role, but just one of many. From Eleanor Roosevelt championing her husband to the presidency in the 20s, to Betty Ford watching her husband ascend thanks to the corruption of the Nixon administration, and of course Michelle Obama, with some apprehension, being there for her husband as he ascends to heights that were never thought for a black man in the United States. These three women we watch as they have three separate journeys which lead to the similar destination. And with each one, we see how a lot of them had to set their own dreams and ambitions aside in order to assist their partner in climbing the political ladder. And as their husbands became presidents, pretty much having to reinvent themselves into not just this new image of First Lady, but also the image of who is expected when it comes to who the president was, as well as what it meant to be a woman at that specific time. And in a way, as you go from Eleanor Roosevelt in the 20s and you go to the 70s with Betty Ford, and then, of course, the late aughts, I think they call it, from Michelle Obama, you see that some things never change no matter what year it is, the state of feminism at the time, or the man who's on the other side of the relationship. So when it comes to highlights, right off the bat, it's Eleanor Roosevelt and how she is portrayed. For with her, I have to admit, she kind of dominates the two other women. For when it comes to the performance, there's charm, comedic appeal, yet a seriousness to the character that almost makes it insulting that they're forced to share with these other two people who, granted, I'm not saying that Betty Ford and Michelle Obama didn't contribute to what it means to be a first lady, but at the same time, when you look at how they set up Eleanor Roosevelt to be FDR's champion, even to the point where even his mama didn't believe in him like she did, and then you add in her having all these opinions and thoughts as soon as he gets in office, like she's going to be part of his cabinet, and then you switch that over to Betty Ford, who's a former dancer turned housewife, and then Michelle Obama, who had to, from what it seems, make herself small in order to fit into this world that her husband has got into. When you put those three people beside each other, it's like Eleanor Roosevelt seems like she should have had her own complete season, and these other two are just kind of invading in a way. But that's not to say that when it comes to Betty Ford, who's probably the least notable of the three, at least for me, that she doesn't contribute. With Betty Ford, I think one of the main things we get from her, and I'll go a little bit into more of that when it comes to the third highlight, but something that's specific just to her is the whole thing about her, going to see a psychiatrist slash psychologist when it comes to, getting her life together, because we're talking about the 1970s, where usually when someone's seeing someone of psychiatric help, the idea is they're mentally off, they need to be committed, or at least that's the stigma involved. And I would say when it comes to Betty Ford, she's probably the first one of the three that really makes you want to check the facts, but in a good way, to see if Gerald Ford really did have to go through all this just because his wife was seeing a psychiatrist, due to her trying to refine herself and reconfirm who she is while connected to a powerful man. Which brings us to the last highlight, which is just understanding the spectrum when it comes to, I would say, Betty Ford on one extreme, Eleanor Roosevelt on the other, and then Michelle Obama in the middle. Because I think, as noted in the highlight with Eleanor Roosevelt, you put these three together, it's kind of like it doesn't make a whole lot of sense why you would put these three together. Yet, with having these distinct personas, or archetypes rather, you get that these three pretty much can represent almost all of the different first ladies we ever had. Eleanor Roosevelt represents not just herself, but also the Hillary Clinton types who clearly are as ambitious as their husbands and can get a lot done. It's just, unfortunately, because of their gender, they've always been set aside, or else were never able to reach the same heights that their husband have gotten to. Then, of course, on the opposite end, you have the Betty Ford types who make wonderful first ladies, because as much as they're far more than eye candy. At the same time, like the Jacqueline Kennedys and people like that, they're more so people who they can cause minor waves, but they're not people who are really trying to shift the dynamic of what a first lady does and really like put their stink on it to the point where it seems like a bigger position than what the president or even the administration has shown through Betty Ford dealing with Donald Rumsfeld and also Dick Cheney. You know, getting this vibe that they want to use their fame in order to possibly do some social change and maybe shine light on things, but they're not trying to be some controversial. If anything, they just want to do something more than just decorate. And then that brings us to the Michelle Obamas, who I think is going to increasingly become what our first ladies are, where it's like her, Jill Biden, where they've had full careers outside of what their husbands do, but now they're trying to figure out a way to balance who their husbands need them to be, who the American public expects them to be, yet at the same time not lose themselves in being pulled in those two different directions. Because on top of who their husbands need them to be, who the American public expects them to be, there's still oftentimes somebody's mother, they have jobs of their own, or in case of Michelle, she kind of put that aside and decided to, really put herself into the administration with all of her different campaigns. Though, as shown with Dr. Joe Biden, some decide, I'm going to do the work of the First Lady, but I'm not going to abandon the work I did beforehand just for you. And she, in my mind, Michelle Obama represents more than just the whole, what does it mean to be a black person in the White House and that whole span, but more so what does it mean to be a working woman who has a full life outside of what your husband does, and yet in order for him to be as successful as he needs to be or to get to this echelon, you kind of have to learn how to take a step back and, try to figure out how am I going to fit into his world without losing who I am in the process. So, when it comes to on-the-fence topics, first, foremost, probably top issue is Viola Davis and her facial expressions. To me, the way that Viola Davis plays Michelle Obama and how she's written is kind of like fighting each other. On the one hand, you do have everything that if you read Michelle Obama's book Becoming, you get in terms of, Michelle Obama's older than Barack, had this whole big career that he was her underling, and yet now she's getting absorbed into his world, having to change who she is, having to deal with all these different perceptions of herself as a black woman, how to kind of manage that, and on top of that, deal with the fact that her husband has death threats against him, including assassination attempts, and just the overwhelming amount of thought she had to put into what she was doing to the point where it doesn't seem like she could actually get to enjoy it. Yet, even with all that you can see the writers want you to look at, how much between Viola Davis's character and Michelle and the person who plays Barack, you can see them trying to do all that so that you understand the full weight of what Michelle went through. It's hard to really get into it when it feels like Viola Davis is doing a SNL sketch with these weird faces that she makes that take you completely out of it. I would even say, because of the presentation, you completely lose the message. Because watching her make weird little faces is like that, and also with the makeup, it's like a caricature. It's like a drag queen did Viola Davis's makeup and said, do what you always do, camp it up a little bit, and then put it on screen. And that's what is ultimately delivered. In terms of the last topic and the last on the fence topic, for us, it's going to be that sometimes it feels like this show just jumps around too much. Again, part of the reason this is an issue is because Eleanor Roosevelt kind of eclipses the other two. So us jumping back and forth 12 times between 1892, when Eleanor Roosevelt is shown to be a child talking to her uncle Teddy Roosevelt, up to 2008 when Obama is meeting with George Bush for the transition and Michelle's speaking with Laura Bush. It's just a lot of back and forth. And this includes going back to when Michelle's a teenager and got the letter to go to Princeton. And then we have her dealing with, Obama not even being a nominee yet, they're getting Secret Service. It's all necessary information to include, but it does really push you to think rather than have it where these three were sharing an episode, maybe with this being, I believe, a 10 episode season, they could have split it up so that maybe Eleanor could have 3 or 4 episodes, Michelle could have had 3 or 4, and then not to keep downplaying Betty Ford and what she might have done. She wasn't really some notable figure in my history book, but they could have gave her like 2 to kind of go through what it meant to be someone on the outside watching Watergate happen and your husband get everything he wants thanks to a scandal, and then when it's time to be actually elected, him losing to someone else. But unfortunately, for whatever reason, it was decided let's just clump it all together and hope it works for the best because we have such talented actresses and talented writers in the forefront. When it comes to the First Lady, I feel like at this point, it's the kind of show that should have been an anthology, where either one whole season would have been dedicated to each woman, or else it would have took blocks, like blocks of 4 for this person, blocks of 4 for that person, blocks of 2 for that person, and then handle it that way. For while I understand that how one thing leads to the other and how a lot of their stories can be mixed together and it can make sense, at the same time, I feel like what Eleanor Roosevelt went through and what she tried to do really does mess everything up for when you look at Betty Ford. And when it comes to Viola Davis as Michelle Obama, as powerful as you can see Viola Davis's potential with this could be, those facial expressions, that makeup, it is really tearing down what she's trying to do here. And I could only hope as Michelle Obama, got better makeup teams and stuff like that, and was kind of a bit more aware of what the perception was, maybe Viola would tone it down. Otherwise, I do feel that that's going to really mess things up and make it so. Well, Gillian Anderson will get a lot of praise for this, and probably Michelle Pfeiffer too, because I feel like people still underestimate what she can do as an actress. Viola Davis may end up being the blemish on this in the long run. In which, if you look at social media right now, it seems like a lot of people are questioning whether or not Viola Davis may have beef with Michelle Obama because of the way she's portraying her.